As we came into the arches area, the first arch we saw was a tiny one called Jug Handle Arch, but there was much more to come. We were driving along the Colorado River looking for a campground. There were several campgrounds, but they were all full because it was the weekend. A lot of people come to the area for recreational use of the Colorado River, and it was very hard to find a place to camp. We ended up going 21 miles out past the entrance to Arches to find a place to camp. However, we got some amazing views of the rock formations in the sunset. We ended up just outside the national park on BLM land and found this beautiful place to camp just off the road for free. And that night, the stars looked like this. We did not take this picture, but this is what they looked like that night. It was truly awesome. And then the next morning, we were able to see the same landscape going back into town, only during the daylight hours. It was a beautiful drive and definitely worth the miles that we had to go back. We're just at the beginning of, what park are we in? Arches.
Yeah.
And here's a 360. It's different than the other parks. Each one is different.
Phone charged up in the car.
Yeah.
Always have that thing.
Wow, this is just incredible. There's the Three Wise Men again. We're just at the beginning.
Courthouse Towers.
When we looked at the map later, we saw that the Three Wise Men was actually called the Three Gossips, but it's the Wise Men, isn't it? And this rock out in front of them was called Sheep Rock. As we went on, we saw many different arches, and some of them we were able to walk up close to, like this one. Balanced rocks, things like that. Here's a view from the top of where we hiked one day. It says this is the Parade of Elephants. I think that one in front is trying to reach a jug of water down below. This formation is called Park Avenue because the formations look like buildings along a street in New York City. We hiked a very tiring trail to see this delicate arch. A few years ago, they had to restrict car access to Delicate Arch. You can see people up there, but they hiked 3 miles round trip in the hot sun with no shade to be able to get close to Delicate Arch, and we decided that we were not up for it that day. We decided that we didn't want to drive 30 miles out again, so we looked for a place in town where we could spend the night. We met Pastor Cole Howe of Moab Baptist Church, and he told us we could not only spend the night, but he invited us to an end of summer breakfast the next morning. Boy, can those Utah Baptists cook. It was a wonderful time of food and fellowship before we went to church with them that Sunday morning. Getting tired. We've taken 2 long walks today, so no commentary. This picture shows you the beautiful La Salle Mountains that were in the background as we drove along in Arches. We were in the heat of the day and the mountains were snow-covered. I do think this looks like George Washington, though. You can name things whatever you want. This one to me looks like a clown playing a drum. These These are supposedly petrified dunes. But then on the other side we have this huge rocks. Double Arch was probably the most unusual formation that we saw, so we decided to record our presence there. Just a few more views of some of the amazing sculptures made by nature that we were able to visit and walk around and drive past. It was truly an amazing trip. Well, the park is really full today, but we've still been able to see most of what we wanted to see. Haven't had too much trouble parking, actually. But isn't this an amazing parking area? This is at the end of the road. It's called Devil's Garden. It's where the only campground is. To see this arch, we had to walk through a narrow passageway between the rocks out into an open sandy area where we were rewarded with the view of a very beautiful arch that we could actually climb around and enjoy that way. As it got toward evening, we walked up toward Landscape Arch, which is actually threatened because pieces keep falling down, and one day we could go there and it wouldn't be there anymore. But it was a beautiful arch, and you see it on a lot of the literature. We spent several days in the park, did a lot of hiking, put down a lot of footprints as we enjoyed these majestic natural sculptures. As it got toward evening, the rocks turned red and vibrant. Here's going back past Park Avenue in the evening, and as it got darker and darker, it became just more and more dramatic until the last thing we saw was sculptures silhouetted against the night sky. This is our last view of arches. I'm not going to show you any arches, but this is the original fault, the Moab fault, that created a lot of this stuff. The road follows along the fault line. This side where I'm standing is 2,600 feet lower than the upper section. Geology of this place is really interesting. But we're going to say goodbye and go on our way. We've been here 3 nights, 4 days.